They called it humanity's greatest achievement. The Apollo missions, the moon landing, the first step into the cosmos. But after just a few short visits, we stopped. No colonies, no bases, no permanent presence. Why? In an age obsessed with space, with billionaires racing to Mars and satellites blanketing the Earth, the moon, our nearest cosmic neighbor, remains eerily quiet, untouched, forgotten. Was it simply funding, politics, lack of interest, or was something waiting, buried beneath the dust, in the shadows of craters, in the static of radio transmissions? Some say there was a message, others say there was a warning, and from that day on, humanity looked further, but never came back. This is the story of what we were told, and what might have really happened on the moon. The story begins, as many legends do, with a war, not one of bullets or bombs, but of ideology and dominance. The Cold War, a silent battle between the United States and the Soviet Union, gave birth to the space race, a contest not just for prestige, but for control of the skies, of technology, of the future. In the 1960s, the moon became the ultimate prize. A barren, airless rock suddenly became a symbol of victory. Billions of dollars were funneled into NASA. Wernher von Braun, a former Nazi engineer turned American visionary, spearheaded the effort. The goal was clear: land a man on the moon and return him safely to Earth, before the Soviets. On July 20th, 1969, it happened. Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin set foot on the lunar surface, while Michael Collins orbited above. Humanity watched in awe. The words, "That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind," echoed through television sets across the world. Flags were planted, samples collected. The mission was a resounding success. But that was just the beginning, or so we thought. In the following years, several more Apollo missions touched down. Each one brought more data, more samples, more hope. Some even carried modular components for future lunar bases. NASA drew up long-term plans for lunar stations, permanent outposts, and even a springboard to Mars. And then, silence. By 1972, after Apollo 17, everything stopped. Not gradually, not with a slow wind down, but abruptly, like a door being slammed shut. Officially, it was due to budget cuts, waning public interest, and shifting priorities. But many researchers and former insiders whisper of something else. Something that shifted the mission from exploration to containment. What did they find up there? Because somewhere between Apollo 11 and Apollo 17, the mission changed. From planting flags to avoiding certain places. From discovery to silence. For decades, the world believed it had seen and heard everything from the moon missions. Crystal clear footage of astronauts bounding across the surface, pristine images of the Earth rising above the lunar horizon, and triumphant voices echoing from mission control. But those were the moments meant for public consumption. Behind the polished broadcasts and historic sound bites lie hours of missing footage, redacted transcripts, and unexplained gaps in communication. Some dismiss these as technical glitches. Others say they were deliberate omissions of things never meant to be seen. Take Apollo 11, for example. During the descent to the moon, a 2-minute radio blackout occurred. For years, NASA claimed it was a systems error. But leaked audio from ham radio operators, who had tapped into the raw feed, suggested something far stranger. In hushed, crackling tones, Neil Armstrong reportedly described seeing lights on the edge of a crater, objects that shouldn't have been there, objects that seemed to be watching. Then there's Apollo 17, the last official mission. Video footage from that trip shows a brief moment when the camera pans to what appears to be a structure, angular, casting a shadow inconsistent with surrounding terrain. The feed cuts. It never resumes from the same angle. One former NASA contractor, speaking anonymously in a 2006 interview, claimed he saw footage marked classified, showing what he described as artificial shapes and motion near the horizon. He was told never to speak of it again. Even astronaut Buzz Aldrin hinted at strangeness. In interviews, he mentioned hearing music in the void of space, rhythmic, electronic tones with no discernible source. NASA would later claim it was interference, but Aldrin's eyes, in those moments, told a different story. The deeper you go, the more you find records that were altered or erased entirely. Mission logs marked with entire pages missing, tape reels recorded over. It raises the question, what was so important, so unsettling that it had to be buried? And more chillingly, was it a warning? Once the initial excitement of the moon landings faded, a new kind of curiosity emerged. One driven not by engineers or politicians, but by researchers, image analysts, and independent thinkers combing through NASA's own materials. What they found didn't always align with the official narrative. High-resolution photos from Apollo missions, once archived and forgotten, revealed strange inconsistencies. Symmetrical formations in the middle of otherwise chaotic crater fields, perfectly hexagonal outlines, tower-like protrusions casting long, unnatural shadows. One object, nicknamed the Shard, appeared in photos taken by Lunar Orbiter 3 in 1967, years before any manned landing. It stood over a mile tall, impossibly thin, and cast a long shadow over the surface. Scientists dismissed it as a photographic artifact, but later missions avoided imaging the region altogether. Another anomaly, dubbed the Castle, was captured hovering above the moon's surface, a translucent, rectangular structure suspended in a way that defied gravity. Again, NASA claimed lens distortion, but independent analysis suggested otherwise. The object cast a distinct shadow on the moon below. Even the so-called glass domes, faint, shimmering arcs seen in the background of several Apollo photos, sparked fierce debate. Were they atmospheric illusions, or the remnants of ancient, colossal structures, now eroded and covered in dust? Former defense analyst George Leonard, in his book, Somebody Else is on the Moon, alleged that many of these anomalies were deliberately blurred or cropped in NASA's public releases. He believed the moon wasn't just occupied, it was being watched. And let's not forget the bizarre patterns of craters themselves. Many showed signs of geometric placement, arranged in tight clusters or triangular alignments, more like installations than impact sites. Natural? Possibly, but unlikely on such a massive scale. At some point, these anomalies stopped being isolated curiosities and began forming a pattern that suggested intelligence, structure, and purpose. But whose intelligence and what purpose? Between 1969 and 1972, NASA launched 6 successful crewed missions to the moon. But originally, the Apollo program included plans for 3 more: Apollo 18, 19, and 20. These missions were intended to expand lunar research, explore new regions, and begin laying the groundwork for long-term habitation. And yet, they never happened. Officially, the reason was budget cuts and dwindling public interest. The Vietnam War. Shifting political tides and economic strain made further missions, according to NASA, no longer worth the cost. But documents from that era tell a more complex story. Some internal memos suggest the cancellation was abrupt, not financial, and may have involved operational concerns that were never explained. Moreover, Apollo 20 was reportedly fully constructed and ready. Crewed by experienced astronauts, it was quietly scrapped. No public statement. No final mission briefing, just silence. Then came the rise of rumors, whispers of black missions, launches that happened without public knowledge, hidden under the veil of national security. One such tale involves an alleged Apollo 20 flight in 1976, supposedly a joint American-Soviet operation sent to investigate a massive object spotted on the far side of the moon, what some described as a crashed alien vessel. Most mainstream scientists dismiss these claims as hoaxes or science fiction, but something deeper lingers. Why did the most ambitious space program in human history, having achieved the impossible, simply walk away? NASA had plans for permanent lunar bases by the 1980s. Designs for orbiting stations, deep drilling missions, and even lunar mining were drawn, funded, and quietly shelved. It wasn't just that we stopped going. It was as if we were told to stop. To this day, no human has returned to the moon since 1972. Not one astronaut has set foot on its surface in over 50 years. Even as we send rovers to Mars, probes to the outer planets, and private rockets into orbit, the moon remains conspicuously untouched. Why? What changed? And who or what was behind that decision? If NASA's silence is a puzzle, then the missing piece may lie not in the missions themselves, but in what they awakened. For decades, scattered testimony from former engineers, radio operators, and even astronauts has pointed toward one chilling possibility: that the moon is not just a rock, it's occupied. Not by beings living openly on the surface, but by watchers, observers, intelligence that has been there long before us, and perhaps built the structures we've glimpsed only in blurred images and fleeting shadows. Throughout the Apollo missions, there were moments when astronauts sounded startled, hesitant, even afraid. Their words were sometimes cryptic or lost entirely during technical anomalies, but behind those glitches, some claim, were reports of craft parked near craters, of metallic reflections where none should exist, and of a presence that made it clear: humanity was being watched. Some believe this was the true reason the mission stopped. Not failure, not funding, but warning. The theory suggests that once we arrive, once we stepped into what was never ours, we were quietly, firmly asked to leave. No weapons, no contact, just a silent understanding: this place is not yours to claim. In 1994, when NASA launched the Clementine probe to map the moon, large sections of the data, especially from the far side, were obscured or degraded beyond use. And every modern attempt to return, even with private funding and new technology, has faced inexplicable setbacks: technical failures, delayed launches, unexplained loss of communication. To some, this appears coincidental. To others, strategic containment. Why does the moon matter so much? Because it is not only our nearest neighbor, it is our mirror, a reflection of our potential, a gateway, perhaps, to something larger than we can imagine. Colonizing the moon was supposed to be the first step to Mars, to interstellar travel, to a future unbound by Earth. And yet, we stopped. The moon, once the symbol of limitless possibility, has become a border, a frontier we are no longer permitted to cross. What lies on its dark side? What was seen and hidden beneath the surface? Until we're allowed to return or dare to defy the silence, we may never know. But one thing is certain: in the vast cold sky, the moon watches us back, and it remembers.